Hello, and a very warm welcome to the GreenTech Festival 2020. My name is Judith, and when the founders hired me in January as CEO of the GreenTech Festival, I knew it would be a challenge, but to be honest, nobody was telling me what special challenge they had for me. And I'm talking about COVID-19, because we all know COVID-19 hit us hard and the entire economy, and it felt a little bit like a roller coaster ride with no exit. But we took the risk, and you can't imagine how proud we are to stay in front of you right now. In front of you, our amazing partners, our outstanding exhibitors, all the incredible speakers and encouraging supporters to celebrate change with us. Because we all know climate change doesn't take a break, so neither will we. So please welcome our trio infernal, our founders, who live the vision, who fight for the mission, and who keep the ball always rolling. So please enter the stage, Nico, Marco, and Sven.
Keep distance. Thank you, Judith. Thank you to our big boss, our new big boss. Thank you, Judith, who helped us a lot during these strange times. Welcome to the GreenTech Festival 2020. It was really hard for us to organize all this, and we're really proud and we're really happy to present you the GreenTech Festival this year. It's a special moment for us, it's a special moment for all of us, and it never happened without big partners like Deutsche Bahn, like Audi or Salesforce. And I would say, keep in mind we are here to protect ourselves, to protect our nature. This is why we are here.
A sincere welcome also from my side, and I have to summarize what a crazy year. We had long discussions internally how to deal with Corona-19, and taking into account all these arguments, we decided that whatever happens, personally or even COVID-19, there are things which can't pause, which can't rest. And one of these things is taking care about the environment. So we are so proud and happy having you here. And thank you very much for supporting us, for all the people making it possible here. And let's have a great festival 2020 for the environment.
I would also like to take the opportunity and welcome everybody from around the world watching. Thank you for tuning in virtually. It's an honor to have you with us. And I'm very much looking forward to our introductory session now coming up, where we've united some of the greatest visionaries of our planet. We have Ursula von der Leyen, our EU president. We have Google CEO Sundar Pichai, who's going to have a word for us. And I don't know if you saw the news recently, but Google made a very, very, very bold statement. So 2030, Google will only use renewable energies directly to power their data centers globally. So this is a big, big mission, and we're hearing from him for the first time after that global announcement. So you can look forward to that. It's going to be live across the world. We're just going to jump backwards and then quickly start that session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome to everybody here and to everybody watching from around the world on Bloomberg TV and on all the other media outlets. Switch Green is our 60-minute session to our GreenTech Festival 2020. We are uniting 12 visionaries and innovators from around the world to accelerate our transition to greener technologies. From politics to businesses and even to NGO leaders. They're going to share their personal stories and also their very personal calls to action. I'm a Formula 1 world champion from 2016, and I'm also switching green. And you can believe me, it's quite a big switch. But I can tell you, it is possible. It's very dear to my heart to leave a meaningful legacy. And in the process, I also really hope to inspire my 2 young daughters and to contribute positively to the world. Here is our personal Switch Green commitment for the day. We're going to stop this year 500,000 plastic bottles from entering the world's oceans. And we are hereby the first festival ever to be plastic positive. And we've done that with our partner, Plastic Bank. When I first met David, who is Plastic Bank's founder, I had tears in my eyes. His story is so powerful. He is giving a monetary value to plastic waste, and thereby helping millions around the world who have nothing. So without further ado, I would like to hereby introduce you to our first talk in this special session, to David Katz, from Plastic Bank.
Hi, everybody. This is David Katz, CEO and founder of the Plastic Bank, and 2019's Game Changer of the Year award winner. Welcome to GreenTech 2020. You're all here gathered to make great global change, and so am I. At the Plastic Bank, we've monetized waste to help lift people from poverty that in the end stops the flow of plastic from entering the ocean. A global chain of stores that monetizes waste and allows the poor to transcend poverty while they clean the environment. It's a global task, a multinational task, and I can assure you that when I had the idea, I as well thought myself as just one simple person. You are the person that can do it. My realization at the time of the idea was that I didn't need to be the person that could make great global change. I needed to simply decide to become the person who could. And anyone who is here has that same power. It doesn't have to be perfect. As perfect as the enemy of the good enough. And what the world needs are people who are standing forward to make change. Good enough where you are, with the power and the ability to continue to learn and persevere, and be in the heart of your vulnerability, to be open to the lessons that you need to learn, so that the world can benefit from the power that you are here today. Well, welcome to GreenTech 2020. As you participate in the rest of the conference, know that you have everything that you need to be who the world needs you to be. So welcome to GreenTech 2020. Good luck. Have an amazing journey.
Plastic. By now, you probably feel like an expert on the material and filled with the knowledge of why we need to take urgent action. My name is Melati, I'm 19 years old and a full-time changemaker. My story starts when I'm 12 years, currently where I'm filming this video, in beautiful Bali, Indonesia. Now what some of you may not yet know is that Indonesia is actually the world's second largest source of marine plastic pollution. So growing up here on the island, every time we would swim out in the ocean, surfing, there was always plastic. Whether we would learn how to plant rice, we were doing that on top of plastic. It wasn't some distant story or a headline news for us, it was our reality. And so, At the age of 12 years old and my younger sister 10, we looked at each other and said, what are we going to do about it? What can we do right now? And that was the first moment for us that we switched green. That was really an encounter for us where we thought, enough is enough. We don't want to wait until we're older to start taking action. And so without a business plan, without a strategy, we went ahead and created our first organization, Bye Bye Plastic Bags. The mission and the name is interlinked. We had this vision to make our island home of Bali plastic bag free. Little did we know, it was not going to be a summer passion project, and here we are 7 years later, still on the ground, still campaigning, and still doing many workshops with all levels of society. One of our biggest achievements through bioplastic bags is that because of the collaboration, because of this mass movement of like-minded people, Bali finally implemented the ban on single-use plastic bags, straws, and styrofoam as of last year. So, you can imagine our team has been celebrating, but we also know that the work is just beginning. Throughout the 7 years of campaigning with bioplastic bags, I had the opportunity to travel around the world and meet other young people. I was spending more time in other people's classrooms than my own classroom. And that actually grew a massive passion for me. I started to see the power and the potential of the generation I'm a part of. You see, when I would share the story of bioplastic bags and all the things we had done in the last 7 years, kids would sit up a little bit straighter, lean in a little bit more, and say, wait, you're my age? You had homework as well? Well, then if you can do it, I can do it too. And that's where youth empowerment, education, and peer-to-peer empowerment came to be. That's a new passion of mine that I really focus on with our new project, Youthtopia. We're a community-centric platform with learning at its heart, and we work together with frontline young changemakers to build that peer-to-peer programs to empower and inspire the rising young changemaker. Bye Bye Plastic Bags is the living example that kids can do things, from an idea into reality. And Youthtopia is the next step. My personal Switch Green commitment is to continue helping this acceleration of young people and holding governments and industry leaders accountable. Not a single person or a single idea or a single organization is going to solve the crisis we are in. We need a mass collaboration to come together. To all of those watching under 25, get involved in every and any way that you can. Use your voice. To the young people, show up and be the change. For those of you that are watching and are a little bit older, accept the change. We can no longer go back to normal because there is no normal. Take a look at what's happening around the world today. We've had to change the way we learn, the way we work, the way we travel, the way we communicate with each other. So instead of looking at this as a burden, let's take it as an opportunity, an unprecedented opportunity for us to change and reinvent, refocus, redefine the way we move forward. Because, ladies and gentlemen, business as usual is no longer working. We not only have to switch green, but we have to switch our mindset and take this opportunity 100%. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming, for watching, for connecting. You are dozens of thousands from all over the world. Your energy, audacity, and with your creativity. And this is exactly what we need with the challenge ahead of us. Now, what is this challenge when it comes to switch green in politics? Our challenge is to turn our words into action. We need to implement the Paris Agreement fully. And how do we do it? At European level, our answer is the European Green Deal. The European Green Deal is my Commission's roadmap to a very clear objective: making Europe the first carbon-neutral continent in the world by 2050. And this means putting on the table a broad and unprecedented green agenda, green legislative proposals, a green budget. This we have already started to do. On the 11th day of my mandate, I presented the European Green Deal to the European Parliament. In March, we tabled the European Climate Law. It was followed by the European Industrial Strategy. And then, on March 11th, we delivered the action plan on the circular economy. The very same day, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic. Now, should we stop our course because of the pandemic? Of course not. We stay on track. And this is why we also adopted our Farm to Fork strategy and our biodiversity strategy for 2030 and the European strategies for energy, system integration and hydrogen. We are staying the course because all these issues are interrelated. Biodiversity and pandemic, energy and climate, food and health. We have started and we will continue. Only this morning I delivered the State of the Union speech before the European Parliament and my vision for Europe which overcame the pandemic. The European Green Deal is an indispensable building block of Europe's future. Many are asking, will we have the money for the required investment? And yes, we will. 30% of the Recovery Fund, Next Generation EU and our long-term budget will be reserved for climate goals and green projects. This is around 600 billion euros. And if we get it right, Next Generation EU can be one of the largest stimuli for investment and reforms in the world. It will provide massive investment in renewables, grid infrastructure, sustainable transport, energy-efficient buildings, but also artificial intelligence, industrial digitization, the rollout of 5G, you name it. So we are doing our share. We provide direction, predictable rules, and resources. But we need you, the business leader. We need you to innovate, to liberate the creativity, to stimulate society, show the way ahead. And when I speak of innovation and creativity, I do not limit it to one technology alone or one sector alone. There's no single solution to address climate change. Becoming a climate-neutral continent requires changes in how we build our houses, how we grow our food, what we eat. It requires changes in how we heat our buildings, how we commute, how we work, how we design our cities, you name it. I'm thinking, for example, of how agriculture can change. With agroecology, agriculture benefits from the development and integration of information and communication. It gains from sensor-based and data technologies. It benefits from digital data for precision farming. And all this generates local jobs and new jobs. It can stimulate the changes in behavior that we need in order to have a healthier planet. And this is just one example of multiple wins. One example of how we can direct investment and innovation to achieve sustainability. We need a system change. And that requires business leaders to innovate. It requires political leaders to decide. And it requires our society as a whole to act. I am confident we can meet this challenge. When the young generation, business, politics, and society work together, and you can rely on the fact that the European Commission is with you. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation to speak at this year's GreenTech Festival. I want to start by commending President von der Leyen and the Commission for the Green Recovery Plan. Europe has long been a leader in climate action, and I applaud your vision for becoming the world's first carbon-neutral continent by 2050. Google supports you and stands with you. And we are glad to be partnering with the GreenTech Festival for the second year in a row. Under Nico's vision, you are uniting a global community of innovators who believe in the power of technology to make the world a better, more sustainable place. Sustainability has been a core value for us since Google was founded 22 years ago. Let me tell you a little about where we have been since then. By the end of our first decade, we were the first major company to be carbon neutral in our operations. By the end of our second decade, we had achieved 100% renewable energy, matching our electricity consumption with clean energy for our data centers and offices around the world. Last year in Finland, I announced the biggest corporate purchase of renewable energy in history, adding 1,600 megawatts of new capacity. Nearly half of that is right here in Europe. 10 projects spurring more than 1 billion euros investment in new infrastructure. Offshore wind in Belgium, solar in Denmark, and wind energy in Sweden and Finland. Last month, we issued $5.75 billion in sustainability bonds, more than any other company ever. And as of this week, Google is the first major company to eliminate our entire carbon legacy, including all our operational emissions, before we became 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And in the process, we are going to enable more than 10,000 green jobs in the first 5 years alone, with more than 2,000 of them here in Europe. Green jobs aren't just good for the environment, they're good for the economy, and we need both more than ever. While achieving carbon-free operations is an important way we can help to build a more sustainable world, we know we can't do it alone. That's why we are using data to help more than 500 cities reduce 1 gigaton of carbon by 2030, providing $4 million in Google.org funding to nonprofits, including here in Berlin, and investing in the tools and technologies that can help everyone live more sustainable lives. We're also excited to announce a new Google.org Impact Challenge on climate, which will put 10 million euros of funding behind bold ideas to help Europe create a greener, more resilient future. From the European Green Deal to the ideas you're sharing at GreenTech, thank you for everything you're doing to make the next decade of climate action the most ambitious yet. We are proud to be a part of it with all of you. Enjoy the rest of the festival, and I hope to be back in Berlin again soon.
I am Klaus Schwab. I am the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, the Organization for Public-Private Cooperation. I have been engaged on the environment since the early 70s, when I created the forum in order to have a platform to promote stakeholder capitalism, which means that business leaders should not serve only shareholders, but all stakeholders. And of course, Mother Nature is a great stakeholder for all of us. I'm also proud that already in 1973, I provided the first big platform for the Club of Rome report, which was the first wake-up call reminding us all that natural resources are not unlimited and should be used carefully. I have fought now for 50 years to have environmental responsibility integrated in all decisions we take as governments, businesses, and also as individuals. 2020 is a critical year for climate change action. If we are to deliver on the Paris Agreement and put the world on a path towards net zero by 2050 or even sooner. To give you an idea of the scale of the challenge, emissions from heavy industry sectors such as steel, aluminium, cement, chemicals, aviation, shipping, and heavy road transport are responsible for 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions and are expected to account for 15.7 gigatons by 2050. If we are to have any chance of reaching the Paris Agreement targets, we need powerful public-private industry coalitions that can drive systemic transformation. That is why the Forum launched the Mission Possible platform, together with the United Nations, the Energy Transitions Commission, and other leading organizations and governments. Over 200 companies are now part of this coalition, bringing together the world's top influential organizations in the realms of corporate leadership, industry expertise, global supply chains, finance, all together to drive forward net zero pathways. Additionally, in January in Davos this year, I, together with the chairs of our International Business Council and the Alliance of CEO Climate Leaders, issued the Net Zero Challenge. The main goal is to get as many, if not all, our members, the World Economic Forum members, to commit to a net zero emissions by 2050 or hopefully much sooner. We are now following up on these commitments through mobilizing our CEO, climate leaders, and through making sure that business and industry are aligned around the ESG, environmental, social, and good governance principles. We need your help in this work. No single government or business can tackle the challenge of climate change alone. We need to enhance the stewardship of our global commons to drive cohesive, sustainable, and resilient economic and social systems.
Hello to everyone. I'm Bertrand Piccard, Chairman of the Solar Impulse Foundation. Imagine that I would come back from my flight around the world, non-stop in a balloon or with a solar-powered airplane, and I would say, we have to protect the environment because nature is beautiful, because life on this planet is a miracle. What would happen? I would be applauded by the environmental activists, and I would be completely ignored by the financial, economical, industrial, and political world. And these people actually are the ones who can change something in this world. This is why we have to learn to speak their language. And their language is the language of profitability, of job creation. So let's change now the narrative. What we are doing is not only for climate change. Climate change sometimes is intangible. It is ice melting in the South Pole in 20 years. People don't notice it themselves. We have to speak much more about pollution. Pollution of soil, of water, of air. Air pollution kills 7 million people per year. And this can be someone of our family. We have to show that the world has to become much more efficient. Because we waste 75% of the energy we produce, half of the food, half of the natural resources, 95% of the waste are wasted when they can become a resource for new industries. So being more efficient speaks about the need of being more profitable. Efficient in terms of functioning in the world, protecting the environment, and at the same time creating more jobs and more profit. And this is exactly what we want to prove with the Solar Impulse Foundation. We have decided to select and label 1,000 solutions, technologies, sources of energy, systems, programs, material, products that have the capability to protect the environment and at the same time to create jobs and make money. And this is in the field of water, mobility, construction, industry, agriculture, energy. And this is something that shows to the world that today, protecting the environment is a way to protect the economy of our world, especially in the phase of the recovery post-COVID-19. We cannot go back to the world we had before. That was unstable, fragile, unfair, polluting, and inefficient. We have to go forward into a better world that will be much more profitable for the economy and at the same time offering a better quality of life to the people. And how to demonstrate it? Well, I want to go around the world again with a portfolio of these 1,000 solutions. It will be soon because today we have already selected and labeled 670 proofs that the protection of the environment can be profitable. And I want to go with the 1,000 solutions as soon as we have them to governments in order to give them the tools that they need to be much more ambitious in the protection of the environment, in the regulation. Because today, let's be clear, it is still allowed to pollute, to put as much CO2 in the atmosphere as we want, as much particles in the lungs of the citizens. It's still allowed to pollute water, to put plastic in the oceans. So if we can demonstrate that the protection of the environment, thanks to the new technologies, can be more profitable than the destruction of the environment, I think we'll have a lot of people with us. And clean mobility is one of the examples. Imagine that you drive with hydrogen. The production of the hydrogen can be made by oil companies who know how to produce and sell a liquid. In this case, it would be hydrogen instead of oil. It's a way to put together people. You know, don't fight against the people you want to convince. Take them with you, give them hope, give them the way to diversification. And in this case, we see very well that the diversification will bring a lot of industries together. And more than that, I tell you, if I drive a Kona full electric car from Hyundai, it's not only because of the environment, it's not only because of the economy, it's also because it's much more comfortable. You have no vibrations, you have better torque, you have no noise, you accelerate better, and you are independent. I charge at home with solar cells in my garden. So you see that there is so many things you can do as soon as you have the spirit of pioneering, of exploration. Try to do differently than what has been done in the past. And I hope you will all join this movement and be pioneers, do your part, because you know it brings so much passion to be able to contribute to the well-being of the world, the environment, but also the economy, and to do it all together. So let's be pioneers, because it is logical as much as ecological.
Hi, my name's Ellen, and I'd like to take you through the story that's led to me talking to you today. My previous life was racing boats around the world. From the age of 4, all I wanted to do was go sailing, with that goal to one day somehow sail around the world. I did that twice, once in 2000, once in 2005. And if you can imagine for a moment the world that takes you into, you think very differently. If you left tomorrow to go to sea for 3 months, you would take with you everything you would need for your survival. Food, fuel, medical equipment, spares, everything. And you'd take the minimum, because that boat has to be as light as possible, because I, in the first instance and second instance, were racing and trying to break a record. And then when you leave, you manage what you have, down to the last drop of diesel and the last packet of food. You really do realize what you have is all you have. There is no more. I couldn't just stop in the Southern Ocean and buy more food or fuel. I was 2,500 miles away from the nearest town. So you realize what finite means.
It kind of dawned on me that, you know, what's the difference between using things up on the boat and using them up in our global economy? The way the economy functions uses stuff up. But so much of the conversation was about use a little bit less, let's use a bit less energy, let's use a bit less material. Nothing added up to a system that really worked.
At
Our current economy is predominantly linear. We take a material out of the ground, we make something out of it, and in the end waste it. Within a circular economy, you change the system. You look at redesigning the system in a way which is restorative and regenerative. The first element is to design out waste and pollution. The second is to keep products and materials at their highest value and use at all times. And the third is to restore and regenerate natural systems. When we design something today, we design a product to do a job. What happens to it at the end of its life? What happens to a piece of packaging at the end of its life? What happens to a garment at the end of its life? Every year we're making more and more of this stuff. But if you don't think about what happens to it at the end of its life, when you don't think about what system it returns to, then you're ultimately creating waste.
Our goal at the Foundation is to accelerate the transition to a circular economy. We set up the Foundation with that goal to make the circular economy happen. And we really see significant momentum right across the world in that space today. The circular economy is climbing up agendas, and that increasing understanding of the role that circular economy plays in the climate agenda. We see circular economy becoming more and more prevalent within the goals of businesses. Not just big business, but small companies, emerging innovators with new ideas that are bursting into the global economy today. We really do see a shift, a change in these areas where there's focus on circular economy, specifically around the systemic initiatives, plastics, textiles, food and cities, finance. This discussion is fully mobilized and it's turning into tangible outcomes. And now, perhaps the greatest challenge of all, we need to scale this. At the Foundation, we are changing gears. We're upping the game. This is now no longer a mobilization phase. This is about expanding. It's about adoption at scale. It's about sparking the circular economy in the imagination of learners, designers, business people all over the world to truly take this to the next level. This is about spreading an idea, not just the fact that we need to redesign the economy a little bit, not just the fact that we need to recycle more materials, but the circular economy is a complete redesign of our economic system. And we see businesses, we see governments, we see learners all over the world captured by the imagination of this idea of a restorative, regenerative economy, of an economy that's all about innovation, creativity, rethinking that model and really making it work in the long term. Now we have a long way to go in increasing the understanding of the depths of circular economy and its basic principle of linear to circular. It's simple, but we all know there's a lot more to it than that. We're looking to get to hundreds of millions of young people as they move forward with their careers, so there, in their work, on the design brief, is the circular economy and an understanding of what that really means. This is not about just talking about renewable energy, but renewable materials. How can we build that regenerative, restorative system, that economic model that really can work forever? And this is not just about us. We're pushing as hard as we can. It's about you. It's about collectively the economy shifting from being extractive and consumptive to one which is restorative and regenerative. This is the future, and we need your help to make it happen. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I'm delighted to have the opportunity to contribute to Switch Green today in the company of so many distinguished personalities. I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to Nico Rosberg for this excellent initiative. What can we do faced with the threat of climate change? What is the power of political leaders in the face of such a threat? How can global warming be limited to 1.5 degrees Celsius as defined under the Paris Agreement as being the acceptable upper limit? Is this still possible? How can we work together? These questions which bring us together today are at the heart of my commitment, whether as head of state or chair of my foundation. Like you, I ask myself these questions often because there is no single or definitive answer. In order to try to respond in a few words, I'd like to start with a very simple yet very complex example. A key element but frequently still overlooked, the ocean. The ocean constitutes over 70% of the Earth's surface and 97% of its biosphere. It is a key player in the climatic and meteorological balance of our planet. It produces 50% of the oxygen we breathe and absorbs 25% of our CO2. It represents a biodiversity and wealth essential to the life of planet Earth and of humanity. And yet the ocean is still often conspicuously absent from both international negotiations and national initiatives. Year after year, the ocean is neglected, the ocean is polluted. and this contributes towards increased global warming. Because the ocean transcends borders, because it falls outside traditional political tools, and because we feel it is distant, we humans, who are terrestrial species, all too often ignoring that our lives, economy, and food are dependent on the seas. I realized this at a very young age because my country turns almost entirely toward the Mediterranean, a particularly beautiful, rich, but yet fragile sea. Because our tradition for many decades, even centuries, has been to explore the marine environment, to endeavor to gain a better understanding of it, and thereby to protect it. And because I have seen firsthand the situation getting worse over the last few decades. To address these issues, I endeavored to take action in every way possible, through international negotiations as well as local initiatives and national policies, by combating pollution, especially plastics, by developing marine protected areas, by funding research programs. Over and above their diversity, these actions have certain similarities. I'd like to mention 3 of them. The first is to use science as a foundation, to act always in partnership with scientists, to help them and support them, to listen to them and trust them. The second is to look for solutions, not simply to accept convenient prohibitions or impossible steps backwards. To do everything in our power to make environmental protection also a source of progress for humanity, and particularly for those who are the most vulnerable. Lastly, the third is to speak to hearts as much as to minds. It is to convince as many people as possible and not to limit ourselves to technical discourse. It is to address everyone using words and images, films and exhibitions, examples and narrative. I believe these 3 points are the building blocks that shape any effective policy. They are aimed at the 3 strengths we need to implement action: scientists, economic players, and civil society. It is only by mobilizing and genuinely involving all 3 components that we can progress. Without them, or worse, against them, nothing is possible. As such, I believe that the same applies to the ocean as with any action for the climate and more widely the environment. Let us take action all together. This is the goal of the initiative that unites us today. That is why I'm delighted to be involved, and that is why I hope that it achieves the greatest public impact. Thank you.
Hello. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to this really important GreenTech 2020 conference. We're certainly living in dark times right now, politically, socially, and environmentally. And we're grappling with a pandemic that has swept around the world, causing immense suffering, loss of jobs, disrupting the economy, and changing lives for so many, many people. The tragedy is we've brought this to some extent upon ourselves by our absolute disrespect of nature and animals, destroying environments, forcing animals into closer contact with people, going into their habitats and hunting them, killing them, eating them, trafficking them, selling them in wildlife markets in Asia, bushmeat markets in Africa, and the illegal exotic pet trade that's global today. And these are creating situations which make it relatively easy for a virus to jump from an animal to a human or any other pathogen to create a so-called zoonotic disease. And the same thing's happening in our factory farms. But as we move out of this pandemic, which we shall, then we all must get together to confront the much greater threat to our survival, indeed threat to life on Earth, which is climate change. And it's as we tackle climate change together, moving into a new respect for the natural world and a new green economy, that the skills of the tech community, particularly the young people, will play such an important role. We must get together to slow down climate change. And it's not hopeless, but the window of time is small and closing. We can all plant a tree. There are programs that are saving and restoring forests, because up until now we've lost half the forest cover of the planet. And of course, climate change is leading to these horrific forest fires that we see raging right now in California. And so we can plant trees, we can contribute to saving and restoring forests. Planting trees in urban areas is also absorbing CO2 from the atmosphere and providing shaded areas, so mitigating the effect of climate change in the cities. And each one of us can make some impact every single day. If we eat less or no meat, we are having a major impact on the destruction of the environment, because to feed the billions of animals living in these concentration camps for animals around the planet, environments are destroyed, fossil fuel is used to get the grain to the animals to slaughter, meat to table, and the animals are producing massive amounts of methane gas, one of the worst greenhouse gases next to carbon dioxide. And just in our ordinary choices each day, what we buy, did it harm the environment? And technology is helping us to share these ideas, to help people become aware of what they can do. Technology is also helping to protect environments through satellite imagery, GIS, GPS. And so there is hope for the future. And it's conferences like this, Green Tech, that are so important, because they bring people together, young people with all their ideas, their enthusiasm, their commitment, young people who realize that it's their future and that of their children and grandchildren that's at stake. So I truly hope that this will be a fantastic conference. I'd love to be part of a face-to-face conference, that's for sure, but we will get through the pandemic, and then it'll never return to normal. But anyway, once again, thank you for inviting me, and have an absolutely fantastic conference. Bye for now.
Thank you for inviting me. And special thanks to Nico, whose efforts inspired us to come together today. In the midst of these uncertain times, gatherings like these bring us hope for the future and remind us that we must work together to create a new path rooted in sustainability. So as I was thinking about what I wanted to share with you today, I thought back to that moment in time when I became connected to the natural world. I'm sure many of you participating today have some similar memories. But for me, that moment occurred when I was 11 years old, growing up in Los Angeles. I had developed a mild case of polio that kept me in bed for months and unable to do the things that I loved. And when I recovered, my mother wanted to do something special for me, something meaningful. So we took a road trip to Yosemite National Park. And back then, that was a big adventure. So to set the stage, approaching Yosemite, you drive through this dark, mile-long tunnel. And when we came out the other end, a whole new world opened up for me. I was simply blown away the moment I saw the sheer cliffs of El Capitan and the expansive beauty of Yosemite Valley for the first time. I'm sure like so many others are. So we pulled the car over and stopped to take it all in. Now I distinctly remember thinking, I don't want to just look at this, I want to be in this. So for me at that moment, an important seed was planted that has stayed with me throughout most of my life. As a result, I've been an environmental activist for some time now, and I've tried to use every tool I could to issue a call to action to connect others to our beautiful planet through advocacy and art. Here in 2020, over halfway through one of the most disruptive events in modern history, what we are learning and seeing is how closely we are connected and how important it is to tackle climate change as one planet, one collaboration, and one massive project of human ingenuity. So I do have hope. So many young people are demanding changes and leading the way towards a healthier and brighter future. And I believe in them. and we should do everything we can to support them. As our man-made activities were slowed or even stopped by COVID, our environment showed glimpses of just how powerfully nature can restore itself, if given the briefest chance. This moment in history may become the turning point in our understanding and desire to work together across political aisles, borders, and languages. But if we are to right this ship, each of us must act boldly and with conviction. So let us not forget the importance of voting. I urge you to elect and support leaders who have strong compassion, ethics, and the courage to lead us towards a sustainable future. Remember, this is our only planet, our one and only home. So I look forward to seeing what we can do together with our time, our voices, and our collective power to preserve our future. Thank you.
Hello, Switch Green friends. I am Cristiana Figueres. I'm the former Executive Secretary of the Climate Change Convention, and I had the honor and the pleasure to bring 195 countries together in the Paris Agreement of 2015. I feel that I'm probably in a good position, therefore, to say that the Paris Agreement is a pretty good business plan. Let me call it a pretty good global business plan. But like every other business plan, it needs to be implemented, and it needs to be implemented in a timely fashion. Because if we don't implement business plans, they stay on the shelf, they have absolutely no impact, and they do us no good. Now, in order to implement the Paris Agreement in a timely fashion, today we know that we must, over the next 10 years, reduce global emissions by 1/2. That is what science has determined. That means that this decade, the decade of the 20s, has actually risen to become the most important, decisive decade in the history of humankind. Not that we would have known that 20 years ago. But now we know that by 2030, we must be at half our greenhouse gas emissions, at least by 2030, if not sooner. Now, here's the consequence. If we do not manage to reduce our emissions by 1/2 over the next 10 years, we will walk into a world of constant, increasing, exponentially increasing physical destruction, economic destruction, impoverished health, and human misery. Not the world that we want. It is the world that we're walking toward now, but it's not the world that we want. So we know that we have another option. We know that over the next 10 years, we can choose a different world. And by halving our emissions over the next 10 years, we can enter into a world that is much more stable, that is actually much more healthy, that is much better in its agricultural production, that has better transport, that has better energy generation. It is a much safer, a much more stable, and above all, a more just world than the world that we have now. It is an exciting new world that we can create, but we have to consciously and with determination choose that that's the world that we want, and then engage in order to create that world, co-create that world. So if you are the head of a corporation, or you have the influence of a corporation, a city, a community, a country, you can set out your plan for reducing the emissions of that jurisdiction by 1/2 over the next 10 years. Not impossible. And as an individual, whether you have corporate responsibilities or national responsibilities, political responsibilities, over which you must be responsible in order to reduce those emissions, we also need to reduce our own personal emissions. And at an individual level, we also have to reduce our emissions by at least 1/2 over the next 10 years. Not difficult to do. First, we can change our diet. Just give up red meat. You will already very much improve your carbon footprint. move toward much cleaner transportation or shared transportation. Take a look at how you're heating and cooling your home and your office. Take a look at whether you're buying renewable energy. Take a look at where your savings are, because if they are in high carbon assets, you will lose those savings because those assets are becoming increasingly stranded, and you are delaying the transformation that needs to occur. And of course, voting in those countries in which there are elections over the next 1 to 2 to 3 years. Very important that we all turn up and vote for those political leaders that understand the emergency that we're dealing with, but that also can look forward to the opportunity that is smiling in front of us to be able to co-create a completely different world, and one that we will be proud to turn over to our children and our grandchildren.
Hi, Nico. It's Sting. I suppose I switched green about 3 decades ago. In 1988, I visited the Amazon rainforest, and I spent some time with a tribe there called the Kayapo. They lived on the Xingu River, which is a southern tributary of the Amazon. I spent some time in a village, and they told me what was happening. At the time, a lot of fires were burning, a lot of smoke in the air. There were miners and loggers on their ancestral lands, which they'd lived on happily for thousands of years. And they asked me if I would help them. I didn't quite know how to do that, so I took one of their leaders, Rowney, a great warrior with a fantastic plate in his lip. He looked very fearsome, around the world to tell this story. His message was very simple. He would say, look, what's happening in my village with all the burning, one day will happen in yours. And so you'd better stop what's happening where we are, because the whole world will be on fire at some point. A very simple message. He's still saying the same thing right now, 30 years later. And of course, we all know now that what he was saying was absolutely true. I believe that the human beings live in this very narrow bandwidth of temperature. It's almost a Goldilocks world we live in, but a few degrees higher, hotter, and a few degrees lower, colder, human beings can't survive. And it's a finite system. If we mess it up with carbon, then we simply can't live, and that's not a hoax, even though some politicians might be rather unwisely suggesting it is. Most scientists in the world agree that we can't go on this way. So it's a finite system. We need to change the way we live and behave in order to survive, for our children and grandchildren to have a happy life. And so this song, Fragile, seems to have had a lot of input. And so I'm going to sing that because our ecosystem is very fragile. Thank you. Blood will flow when flesh and steel are one, drying in the color of the evening sun. Tomorrow's rain will wash the stains away, but something in our mind will always stay. Perhaps this final act was meant to clinch our lifetime's argument, that nothing come from violence and nothing ever could. For all those born beneath an angry star, lest we forget how fragile we are. and on the rain will fall like tears from a star, like tears from a star. On and on the rain will say how fragile we are, how fragile we are. On and on the rain will fall like tears from a star, like tears from a star. On and on the rain will say how fragile we are, 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 how fragile we are.